You know, there's something I always wanted to do, but I never got around to it. I always wanted to try different beefs and see what blends would make the best ground beef. And that's what I'm gonna do here today. After last week, my friend Rick hands me my ass in a meatball competition that I showed you the video of, and I spoke to Rick, and he's gonna have another meatball competition next year, and I also spoke to a bunch of other chef friends who were like, oh, I want a piece of that action. So if I'm gonna be in a meatball competition next year, I don't wanna win. I wanna annihilate whoever comes to this meatball competition. I want them to be completely blown away by my meatballs. I want to see eyes roll and people just going, what did I just have? If I'm gonna make a meatball, I really need to know what the best meat combinations are to fundamentally make the best meatball. I've purchased different cuts of meat, and I didn't want to just select the typical meat that everybody uses for ground beef. I wanted to run the spectrum. It didn't really matter what price it was. I just wanted to see which flavor was produced by which cut. Now, just to keep things simple, I did go with organic beef, but I didn't want to go with grass-fed, because grass-fed is a totally different flavor. I didn't want to have to balance that out in my meatball. What I did buy is grass-fed organic beef that was finished with corn, and it gives it that flavor that we're typically used to in a steak in America. I didn't want to have to also confuse the different types of grades. So I didn't go with prime and I didn't go with select, which is like the better and the lower end of the meat spectrum that you purchase when you go to a supermarket. I went with choice, which is right in the middle, just figuring that I'd keep it on an even playing field. I didn't want to use cuts that I felt would take an excessive amount of time to cook under normal circumstances. So I didn't go with a brisket, or I didn't go with a skirt steak, which I feel needs a little bit more time to cook. I mean, I could have went with a skirt steak. There's also a lot of cuts, and I just went with the most fundamental that kind of every butcher recommends to the most exotic, which no one in their right minds would ever put in a typical family burger or meatball. From the least expensive to the most expensive, we have top butt, we have chuck roll, chuck ribs, and I have a lot of faith in this. I have a feeling that a lot of my burger or meatball is gonna be made with these chuck ribs. Then over here I have this Hellenic blend, and I don't even know what that is. It's a proprietary blend though that my meat purveyor, Austin Meats, introduced me to back in 1983, and it's been on my menu as my burger since then. It's an extraordinary burger. I'm gonna kind of use that as a reference standard, along with this American Wagyu, which is the beef that I used to make the meatballs in the last episode. Then we go to the expensive stuff. We go to a strip steak, which you don't usually use for a burger. I didn't put a prime rib. I made a ground beef once with prime rib, and it just didn't like it. Then we have our ridiculously expensive beef tenderloin, but nowhere near as expensive as the grade A5 Japanese Wagyu. So these are the meats that I'm gonna grind up today. I'm gonna fry them up separately, taste them, see how they compare flavor-wise, make some notes, and then make a decision as to what blend I would do when I make the ground beef for my meatball competition or for a burger. I'll make a suggestion. I'll also tell you which one I feel is the best selection price for the price, and which one is the best selection where price is no limit, and you can make the decision there. Guys, I can't bring myself to take Japanese Wagyu A5 grade and put it in this meat grinder. I mean, even if it tasted spectacular, would I actually go out of my way to make meatballs out of this? If I were to put this in here, I bet you the Japanese government would find out, watch the YouTube video, and then they would have my head cut off. But you know what? You only live once. We'll give it a try. So I laid out the different meats. I made little patties of each one, and I'm just gonna season them with a little bit of salt, and I'm gonna taste each one to get a flavor profile, and then make a determination of which meats I would mix together to make my own ground beef. Without even tasting this, I would say that I would love to add some of that Wagyu fat to the meatballs that I make. I bet you it would be extraordinary, but we're gonna find out in a few minutes. All right, we're gonna give this a little taste to see what's going on. Obviously, I'm gonna go with the Wagyu first because why not? In its current state, you can't even taste the fat. It tastes like a nice ground beef. I would never even consider adding that in. I think the Japanese Wagyu had so much fat that when it was well rendered off, there was no substance to the meat, there's no texture. It's really meant to be eaten medium rare, seared. For the beef tenderloin, that's delicious. That had some really nice characteristic to it. It had a definite firmness to it, but it was moist. There was a good amount of fat in it, but at $20 a pound, let's see how the other ones do. Go to the strip steak. A little more springiness. I can't believe I'm saying this. I prefer to put strip steak in over beef tenderloin. And the beef tenderloin was really awesome, but this has just a nice flavor to it. This is what I would want my burger to taste like. Very good. Now, I know the American Wagyu because I had it last week. Kind of tough. What is it with the Wagyu meat? When you grind it up, it's got a toughness to it. Maybe that's why my meatballs last week were so firm. I wouldn't consider adding any Wagyu beef to my meatballs or my beef burgers. That's very surprising. There's the Hellenic blend. My burger. It's juicy, it's moist, soft. I gotta get Mike to tell me what's in here. This is the one I thought would be very promising. Chuck ribs. Wow. That is fantastic. It's soft. I mean, wow. I would even consider putting just chuck ribs. Maybe a combination of the strip steak and the chuck ribs. That's really good. Now we're gonna use the chuck roll and the top butter, the only two that's left. It's typically what they use for burger meat. Chuck roll's got a little bit of nice flavor, but it's kind of springy and tough. I would not add that. Definitely wouldn't. And last but not least, the top butt. Top butt is nice. That makes a good flavor. I'm shocked. I would have never guessed that the top butt would be part of this. It's a lot softer than I thought it would be. I would use a combination of mostly chuck ribs, some top butt, and some strip steak. I'm gonna make 3 different blends here using the 3 meats that I chose. The first is gonna be 50% chuck rib, 30% top butt, and 20% strip loin. Second, I'm gonna do 50% chuck rib, 30% strip loin, and 20% top butt. And lastly, I'm just gonna try 70% chuck rib and 30% top butt and not put the strip loin in at all, which is the most expensive meat out of the 3. I'm gonna make 3 100-gram patties, cook them to well done, and see which one has the best taste. We'll start with 50% chuck rib, 30% top butt, and 20% strip loin. If I ground that up a little bit more with the finer blade, it would have a better texture. It's very delicious. Definitely better than store-bought ground beef. Is it a good idea to grind your own beef? Well, I think it is. Part of the reason why is because the meat that you will put in your ground beef is the meat that you select from your meat purveyor or store, grocery store, wherever you buy it from. You'll know exactly what goes into it. See, ground beef is usually far less expensive than other cuts of meat, even the cheaper cuts of meat. And the reason why is because ground beef is not made entirely from pure cuts of beef. A lot of times they throw in some scrap, some stuff that you wouldn't normally eat. This is 50% chuck rib, 30% strip loin, 20% butt, the opposite of the strip loin, the butt. That little variation made a difference. Definitely has a more charred flavor, more of a uniform texture. And this is just 70% chuck, 30% top butt. This is a very tough choice. I'm gonna try again. Here's my final decision. If I were making a burger, I would want to do 50% chuck rib, 30% strip loin, and 20% top butt. It makes a phenomenal burger. It's almost like a ground steak. Absolutely delicious. That would be my first choice. If I were making a meatball, which I will be making meatballs, I'm gonna use 70% chuck rib and 30% top butt. And I would like to add make sure that there's at least 20 to 30% fat in there. I gotta make sure it's not very lean. Meatball, 70% chuck rib, 30% top butt. Burger, 50% chuck rib, 30% strip loin, 20% top butt. I'm shocked that the Wagyu didn't even make it into the final round, but that's how it goes. And I'm thankful, because can you imagine a $100 steak was freaking delicious as a meatball or a burger ground up? Oh, devastation. So this worked out beautifully. You can save a lot of money. You don't have to put expensive cuts of meat into your ground beef. If you did use 70% chuck rib and 30% top butt for your burger or your meatball, you wouldn't be missing out on much. And that's the least expensive combination that I would use. I would definitely not use chuck roll. I didn't think it added any good flavor to it at all. And you don't need to use filet mignon. If you want to create like a burger steak flavor, like a chopped steak, use a little bit of strip loin. Oh, and I'd also like to mention one more thing. One of the people who left a comment down below asked me why I kept calling American Wagyu Kobe. And he explained to me that Kobe is a specific breed that only comes from Kobe, Japan. You can't call American Wagyu Kobe. Just like you can't call sparkling wine champagne unless it comes from France. I want to thank you for correcting me on that. The reason why I was confused is because when I did purchase cases of meat, it said American Wagyu Kobe cattle, but I missed that part. So in other words, from American Wagyu from Kobe cattle. So what they were doing is they were generating meat from a breed that specifically came from Kobe, Japan. Now, just like you can't get grapes from Champagne and make them in the United States, it's just not champagne, it's sparkling wine. Similarly, you can't take Kobe beef and call it American Kobe. You can say American Wagyu, which is kind of funny because Wagyu means Japanese cattle, but whatever. But thank you for correcting me. This is what we're all about. We're all about learning together. Hey, you want to find out a little bit more about Japanese Wagyu steak? I released a video about it and about this particular one that you can buy from Costco. Is it worth $99 a pound? There's a link up above and a link down below. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Give this a try. Let me know what you use down below. What is your favorite beef combination for a burger and a meatball? Please leave your comments. Please subscribe. Please keep tuning in. Share this on social media. God bless. Have a great, great week.